What's going on, beautiful J4 family? Thank you all once again for joining us for, in this instance, a father-to-father conversation. Before we begin, thank you guys, whether you're in LinkedIn land, Facebook Live, or actually YouTube. Truly appreciate you guys spending time with us. Was so excited about last Sunday. We had a special guest, Pedrick Hall, who kind of talked about his journey from a father team to a PhD. Had a lot of engagement in the chat, a lot of folks coming over to YouTube and subscribing. So thank you guys so very much. Before we begin, I want to shout out one of my favorite pages on Facebook. It's a group called Black Fathers. Black Fathers. It's a genuine group, a lot of motivation, advice giving, high encouragement, fathers showing pride and love for their seeds. And so if you need a community in the social media virtual space, consider checking out Black Fathers. All right. Without further ado or further delay, I want to introduce you to a dear friend of mine. We have commonalities to include members of the illustrious fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha. Yes, sir. But perhaps more relevant to this here is that Darrin Chapman has been a tremendous supporter of the work that we've been doing here in the J4 conversation, has always kind of commented and participated and showed love. So Darrin, on behalf of the J4 family, the two fathers and the two sons, man, thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother. How you been?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate for the invite and being on the show. J4 conversations is one of my things when I'm on the road. And I got lots of time on my hands, and I just tune in, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and trying to shout out to all my young fathers out there to watch your show. So I'm great. I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me.
Yep. Now, how long you been in the fold? How long you been in the ice?
Let's see. I've been. Say that again.
How long you been a member of the frat?
Member of the frat, spring '92. Later. So a long time. I can't count that high, but it's a little bit less than you. But you made me. You saw me come through. So we had lots of nights, long nights in the cut. And
Well, don't tell all the secrets, brother. Don't tell.
Yes, sir.
Well, you're looking good, man. You're looking young and vibrant. I'm so forward looking to the conversation. For folks just joining in, if you want to announce yourself in the chat, in the comments, I'd really appreciate that. Love to know who's kind of with the community. But D, let's go ahead and get started, man. Tell the beautiful people where you're from, where you hail from, and where you're at now.
Basically, I was born on the East Coast in Greenwich, Connecticut, in 1971, letting you know my age.
There it is.
Gravitated towards California for high school, of course, Arizona State for college. And then my job got me moving to Denver, Colorado, and then explored Dubai for 12 years and worked overseas for 12 years. Just returned back to the U.S. about a year ago.
All right. We have frat brother Sam Melvin, 30 years frat.
Sam. That's
your
my
line,
shit.
bro, is on. Hey, Sam, I want you to ask some questions so that D had to reveal some dark secrets. Hey, Ghazi, what's going on, brother? So good to see you all. Ghazi Muhammad is a farmer. Y'all, that brother is not just a speaker, a motivator. He is a do-it kind of man. He's always been about self-improvement, community improvement. And if I'm not mistaken, he is out in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. I don't know what experience he came up in the Chicago streets, but now that brother's working with farm issues. So all praises to you, brother. D, you mentioned Dubai. Obviously, you're traveled. Tell us about your profession and how that's related.
I was interested in flying as I grew up. Arizona State allowed me to have that opportunity. Shout out to my parents for giving me the opportunity. So I became a pilot at Arizona State. Became a pilot for Frontier Airlines back in '98. The wife and I, ex-wife of mine, wanted to raise the kids overseas. So there was an opportunity. Kids were young. I was young. So we moved to Dubai in 2009. And I flew for Emirates Airlines. Great experience, great for the kids. And now we're back.
Now I was living in Dubai with the kids. Is it I mean, excuse my lack of
Mhm.
Dubai knowledge, but is it a strict environment or is there an American lane to it? How was raising children and living in that environment?
Dubai has a lot of falsehoods that the rest of the world don't know about.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not like a Saudi Arabia where you can't drink, you have to be covered, women can't drive. It's not like that at all. It's a
Okay.
pretty free-willed. 80% of the people that live in Dubai are expats,
Okay.
so only 20% are locals. So they do cater to expat families, and the culture itself is a very family-oriented culture.
Uh,
So the kids really adjusted well. The diversity is overwhelming. It's just amazing. Um, the life that the kids had there and who they met and where they got to
mhm.
travel, and so yeah, it was a really good experience. Very good experience.
Man, for your children to live overseas and to have the expanded worldview, to be able to compare American sort of worldview coupled with an international, in this case, Dubai, I think it's going to do wonders for their sense of self, their sense of breadth and understanding of the totality of humanity. I lived in Italy for 3 years from 9 to 12, and it was so formidable. So I'm
Yeah,
glad you were able to take your fam with you. Uh,
absolutely.
we also got Tyrone Johnson in the house. What's good, Ronnie? All right,
Tyrone.
Tyrone. All right, so you have 4 children, I understand. Tell me about the family dynamics, the age, the gender, that kind of stuff.
Okay, I have a 22-year-old who is my adopted son from an ex-wife. He's currently at Skidmore College in New York.
Okay.
I also have a daughter who is 15 as well. She is living with my ex as well in Spain.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so they never really migrated back to the U.S. They kind of stayed out there um, and doing their thing out there. But fortunately, I get to visit them in Dubai. They would come and then back out here. I also have an 18-year-old who's about to graduate. She's about to go to Regis College, I believe, in Denver for
Okay.
nursing. She hasn't made a final decision, but I think that's the way she's going to go. Hopefully, we'll
Right,
see.
right.
Um, and with my new wife now, 6 years into it, not quite new, but we've got a 3-year-old who is just driving us nuts.
As she should.
Yeah,
As
she
she
should.
should. All right. So prior to having your own biological child birth with your wife at the time, you made a decision to adopt. What motivated that? What sparked that? Did you not think you were going to be able to have a biological child, or that's just something you wanted to do? Tell me about that.
Well, basically, my son, 22 years old, was my ex-wife's son from a previous relationship.
Oh, okay.
So I met him when he was 5. He just took to me, I took to him, and that's how we started the family with him. So I adopted him. Yeah,
All right, and so that's a big range, man. 3 to 22. So
absolutely.
so you and I were talking prior to getting on the show, and for those that are in the in the boxes here, if you have any questions, feel free to for post them. But you had talked about, and I experienced this too. I have a 31 as my oldest and 17 as my youngest, and I definitely parented the older 3 much differently than I did the younger 3. What lessons have you sort of learned from a young man that you kind of came into his life at 5, and now you have a daughter that's younger than the time that you met him? He's 22 now. Tell us kind of, was your approach the same? Was it different? What's the nuance there?
It's definitely different. Being my first child, you're new to things. Um, there's a little bit of fear.
Yeah,
You don't know which way to go. So
right.
you do your best. That's what we all can do. I find that sometimes as a young father, you want to mold your kid. You want to mold them who you want them to be. Um, and I was reading through some of the questions, and one of the big questions in words that I saw was authenticate.
Yeah.
Um, how do we authenticate our children? And I think that we should be able to let them authenticate themselves. Who are they?
Mhm.
What do they want to do? And let them be who they are. At the same time, at a young age, We're there to steer them in the right direction, give them opportunities, let them try different things.
Right.
Um, as far as my son goes, I think I molded him and steered him a little bit too strict. Um,
Huh.
and being the first son was a little bit hard on him, so to speak. And fortunately, he definitely had a mind of his own. He
Right.
knew what he wanted to do. The other half, my ex-wife, was a big influence on him. So there was a good balance with that. Now that he's older, um, and we can speak freely about how I raised him and what he felt I did well and what I didn't do well,
Hmm.
or what I could improve on. I think some of the times I should have just let him choose some of the things he wanted to do, and punishment should have been a little bit less or something like that.
Huh. Right.
Where now with my 3-year-old, I choose my battles a lot more. Um,
Right. Right.
you choose them a lot more. You let them work through them. You guide them, but you can't make them do everything.
Right. Right. That's those are the trials and tribulations of new fatherhood, right?
Right.
And you sometimes wonder, do you take the approach of being too laxed and have unpredictable outcome, or do you take the approach of sort of overbearing, trying to get to a certain point, and you risk perhaps the bond of the future relationship? But before we explore that, so when y'all met, your ex-wife had a child. How did y'all talk through? And I'm saying this because many blended families, are part of current family structures.
Absolutely.
How did you approach the conversation about the extent to by which you would assume the father role 100%? I don't know if the other father was in the picture, but when it comes to discipline, or when it comes to direction or decision making, it's obviously she's been with the child since birth, and here you come 5 years later. That's a pretty decent amount of time where mom and child bonded. So in y'all's relationship, how did y'all approach that conversation about your role as a father, and what were some of the nuance in that?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I think parents that do have blended families definitely need to discuss that.
Hmm.
Um, as far as we did, being at 5 years old, she kind of took the lead with discipline at a young
Okay.
age.
Okay.
Um, I kind of held back at the same time. There was no physical discipline by myself. Um, but as far as steering them in the right direction, yes, I could do that. As they got older and he got more attached to me and more comfortable with me, uh,
Right.
she let those reins go.
Okay.
She felt, okay, he's becoming a man and he needs a man in his life to
Right.
steer him a little bit more forcefully than the woman.
Right.
So as he got to 11, 12, those ages, it started to hear, okay, if you don't listen to your father, he's going to give you a spanking, or if you don't listen to your father, he's going to do this.
Right.
So I kind of let her carry the lead with that.
Right.
And then as he got older, it was more, 80% my duty, 20% mom's duty.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, man, it's important that you all have a conversation, and thank you guys who are here. Feel free to pose any questions that you might have, because obviously you have an attraction. You've progressed in courtship to the station of wanting to be married, but you have this existing life, right? And if you don't have those very direct, robust, thorough conversations, all of a sudden you're married, you're establishing a home, but then you get up to perhaps a non-negotiable line, and this hasn't been talked about, and that could be a major source of angst and anxiety that can be disruptive to the family unit. In that same spirit, you're in a blended family now. I'm assuming you and your wife have the 3-year-old together, but then there's 2 daughters in the middle as well.
Right.
What was that? Was that a similar situation where you talked about how to what your role would be with them, or were they a little older?
They're a little bit older, and I think it was a little bit easier, not as challenging, because they were older. Um, as far as the blending of families now with my 3-year-old, um, I think it was a big issue, and a big thing we needed to do with my new marriage on how are we going to raise this child? What is your strengths as a wife, and what are my strengths as a father? My wife brought it up and made a good point that she's basically a single parent 2 weeks out of the year or out of the month because I'm traveling. I can't be that person that's there 24/7 and supporting her all the time, because she needs to make decisions, normally that a father would make decisions or co-make, and I'm not there. So again,
because you're traveling, right? Because you're
I'm
piloting.
traveling, yeah, I'm in the industry, so I'm gone usually 2 weeks out of the month. So I think that was very humbling for her to bring up to me, and young fathers. These are the conversations you need to have with your spouse, okay?
Right.
Because when these conversations don't happen, then it's a big surprise, and then you got to work it out in the midst of stress, which you don't want. So we basically agreed that yes, I'm a hands-on, all-in father, but I can't come home and say, "Oh, what are you doing? You can't do that. You can't do this,"
Right.
Because I'm not there. So I
Right.
need to relinquish that control, and let her do her thing while I'm gone, and respect that when I'm home. I can't come home and change the house upside down.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's very modern of you, right? That's very modern of
Took
you,
some
D.
time to figure that
Yeah.
out, but yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you now: do you get any personal angst around? You got a one of a kind, very small percentage of human beings have a job as a pilot, right? But do you have any angst with the being away 2 weeks at a time and then having to come in and still kind of adjust because of that? Is there any sort of personal irritation, or for lack of a better term, frustration with that?
I don't think there's personal irritation, but it is frustrating at times because I know she's a single parent while I'm gone, and my expectations when I come home are a certain thing, a certain way, and when I don't see those things, they are frustrating. Uh, when you come home and see your kid doing something, you're like, "Why is she doing that?"
Right.
But I'm not there to judge that because I don't have her, 24/7 for 14 days in a row. So she has to choose her battles as well. And it's not for me to say, okay, what battles are you going to be choosing while I'm gone?
Yeah.
But I think it takes maturity and time to relinquish that control. I don't think I could have done that as a young father.
Right. Yeah. And the maturity is one of the wisest teachers, right?
Absolutely.
Does technology play a role in any way? Like, are you getting structured FaceTime with the baby, and is that
Yes.
just more so like, hey, and it's hi, love you, or is there shaping and instruction and influence there?
A little bit of shaping and instruction, but it's more daddy's on the Skype, or daddy's on the TV or the iPad. You can say hi to him, so that helps out a lot.
Right.
With the 3-year-old, and when she does act up, I'll say a few things over the iPad to get her in line a little bit.
Yeah. Put a little bass in your voice.
Right. We're not using the iPad as a tool yet, for discipline, but sometimes, yeah, if she gets out of line, she'll give me a little Skype or something like that. So
Right. You need to talk to your father.
right, absolutely.
Well, that's beautiful. Still staying with the theme of blended family. So how's the how are they all kind of, do they know each other? Do they have a sense of family bond? Are they still exploring that? How does that work?
My oldest son has not met my 3-year-old daughter yet.
Okay.
But the rest of them have. My 18-year-old, now that she can travel alone, comes out and visits in Dubai quite a bit. She comes out to California. She'll be out here in 3 weeks for a volleyball tournament. So her and the 3-year-old are extremely close.
Okay.
Very close.
Beautiful.
Everything with my 3-year-old is about her sister.
Yay, beautiful.
So, yeah, so that's well. Yeah.
Yeah. Similarly, I've been married twice as well. Got married 21, young, but had Chantal, my beautiful daughter, who's I keep saying 31, but I think I've been saying that for 2 years, D. I think she might be 30. 33 at the moment. But because she was the oldest, I guess, and then my current wife, we have 5 children together,
Right.
and so they've always, been connected in a brotherly, sisterly kind of love. But yes, her perhaps greatest bond is to the youngest daughter, which is 17 years old, and it's such a blessing because in my current homes, there's 4 boys and 1 daughter, and that's got to be a little isolating for her.
Right.
But to have that connect point at whatever breadth and level, I'm very glad, even though it's not an in the house kind of dynamic. But especially among a bunch of sons, sisters, they need to bond and they need to protect
Oh yeah.
themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I did want to give you a shout out to all your children and what you've done with them. You've been an inspiration to me watching your show, and man, five kids, 5 children in that household, and where they're at today is a living example of how to be a great dad. And
Well, I
how
appreciate
family.
that, brother. But there's, as I say, there's been tremendous joys in fatherhood. There's been frustrations. There's been some success, and there's been some challenges, right? And that's one thing I want to convey. Fatherhood is not about batting 1,000. It's about swinging, right? It's about stepping up to the plate and trying to own what you need to own, and not to be sort of crippled by fear of failure, right?
Right.
But to be motivated by the joyous responsibility of attempting, with a partner or a village, to raise healthy, grounded, independent children, right? But I appreciate that, D. I appreciate that, D. On that note, man, tell me about your father. Was your father in the home, or what's the situation?
Yeah, my father was in the home. My parents were married for 34 years, and then they got a divorce when I was about 19 in college.
Okay,
But
okay,
he was present for a long time until I left the house.
okay.
Now I can say he was a corporate man. He traveled a lot, so he wasn't present um, during the week. He was more of a, okay, I'm off on the weekend. I'll be your football coach, your baseball coach, go to your
Mm-hmm.
games, that type of thing. A lot of support on the weekends. But during the week, he either wasn't home or he was tired when he came in. So there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a lot of disciplinary action by him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a lot of fear.
Ah,
Don't mess up because your dad will get you.
uh-huh.
But he didn't really talk much. He left it up to my mom to do a lot of the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you learn from it. There's pros and cons to that. Um, but yeah, he was there. He was a good father. He wasn't as loving and affectionate physically as I would have liked, which I try to do a lot more with my children,
Mm.
because I think that makes a huge difference, especially for your sons. Is giving them a lot of physical love and verbal love, especially for your sons and your daughters.
Right.
Um, but yeah, he wasn't that affectionate in that category. But yeah, he was definitely present, and definitely a great dad, a great mentor, and a great support.
Yeah, you mentioned, D, that your father's example was a great one, a modeling one, but there was also this distancing, perhaps, that you wanted to sort of not bring into your own parenting, right?
Right.
One thing I like to say is to young men, especially in our future father conversation, is to be the father you wish your father was, right? And even if your father was present in the house, as children, I know they have high critique of us. Like, what the hell? And I'm not going to do that with my kid, right? So even a present father provides examples of what the seeds might want to take into their own fatherhood and what they will not, right? But the same thing is true even for a father that's not there, right? A child has kind of a sense of dream and ideally what they would want their father to be because they think about the absence of theirs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, be the father you wish your father was, which is a way of saying take your lessons, take your observation, whether minimal or of magnitude, and then bring those into your own kind of parenting. So, in that same vein, do you find yourself intuitively making these choices, or are they reflective? Do you think about intentionally how you want to father the same and differently? Kind of, how do you approach that?
Intentionally, I definitely think about how I want to father. There's certain categories and certain things that over the years come natural now.
Okay.
Learning, having, a 22-year-old versus a 3-year-old, you learn over the years. However, there's still things with my 3-year-old that I have to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this,
Yeah.
because I know my dad did this, or even my mom. There's certain things that my mom did that, don't want to do to my daughter.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely have to remind myself and say, I sounded just like my mom, didn't I, when I just said that?
Right.
And
Right. Right.
so, you just give yourself reminders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
How do you well, before we move on to that, I want to go back. Your son's 22 now, right? He's in man land,
Mm-hmm.
and he can articulate, memories and those kind of things. And I share this because I had a recent conversation with my oldest son, and out of that came a revelation that I had kind of raised them a little hard,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Absolutely.
perhaps overdid it at times, and that breeded some resentment. It breeded some unnecessary fear.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an incident, without going too much into it, that kind of rose those feelings and emotions to the top. And it was a self-actualization moment for me to say, I think probably to hear what I intuitively knew, right? And that was, earlier you were commending, the fatherhood journey. And again, thank you for that. But I know the truth, right? I know
Right.
the failure. And
Right.
one of the failures is the distancing and the disconnect, and perhaps the harbored resentment that was probably, just was in them for a long time. And this incident sort of brought it out. And I had to set my butt down, man. I had to set my butt down and just eat that, right? I had to process it
Absolutely.
and think about it. And I had to apologize. I had to apologize because I was wanting to preserve future relationships, and I didn't get into defense mode. I just had to eat that, even though I think, there's some complexity to it. But it was a moment of pain.
Yeah.
D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm there. I am right there. I think there's been lots of times um, where my son resented me in how I handled certain situations. He's an athlete. He plays college tennis, that type of thing. Um, so with his sport and that type of thing, I felt I might have been a little bit too hard on him
Right.
with tennis, the mental part of the sport. And eventually he just didn't really want me to be at his matches.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to reflect on that and say, you know what, that's something that I have to live up to, and I have to apologize, like you said, to him with that. So yeah, definitely you got to reflect for older fathers on that, or if you're in the middle-aged kids. Um, my ex-wife used to say, you got to reflect on yourself every day when you wake
Yeah.
up in the mirror. You have to
Yeah.
say, okay, what did I do bad yesterday? How can I do better today?
Right. Well, D, I hope that you and he will continue to have sort of the coming back full circle
Yeah.
conversations. We as fathers, despite our bravado in front, we want to have genuine bonded relationships with our children. I'm going to do an episode about where, fathers say, I don't care if you like me, right? When they're raising hard, and we'll often say that, but that's not true.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
not true. And so we got to find a way to make sure we do what we do, right? That we raise healthy, grounded, independent young children that reflect the tenacity and values of the family, or whatever characteristics we want them to have. But we got to find a way that does not compromise or destroy future relationships, or let alone their spirit in the moment, right?
Absolutely.
And intergenerational father conversations are important because, like you, as a young man on the front line of this, you got a certain way of doing it, or back then. But as an older, more seasoned person, you can offer a different kind of instruction. All right, so let's take a quick recognition. Thank you all for joining us, whether you're in Facebook Live, YouTube land, or LinkedIn. Would love to know who's in the room in addition to Sam, Ghazi, and Ty. If you guys have a question for Darrin Chapman, a father of 4, blended family, a wonderful experience both here in the U.S. and abroad, feel free to place those in the box. All right. How is your children's childhood different than yours, Darrin?
One, it's a blended family.
Okay.
So I think that's quite different. My 3-year-old's growing up with basically being an only child in the home. And I have 2 older sisters, twin sisters that are older. So there's 5 people in my house at once.
Wow.
I think the media, iPads, the internet, cell phones is probably the biggest change in raising children, or how I was raised. We had a lot of time outside playing, riding bikes, playing in the field, that type of thing. So I think it's a big challenge for parents to basically look out for how much time is my child on the iPad,
right?
And limit that use.
Yeah. Shout out to my brother Slick Rick's in the house. Slick, if you got a question, we're talking to Darrin Chapman, frat brother of mine. And as an aside note, my brother went a different route, Darrin, if you can believe it. He's a member of KA Psi. Yeah, he's doing his thing, a policeman out in Chicago. So welcome, Slick. Appreciate you. Let's talk about the technology. It's inevitable, right? It's in here. It's not a matter of, boycott technology.
Right.
But in what ways do you think that would benefit our children, and what concern do you have related to not only technology now, but also what technology will be in place 5 years from now, right?
Right. I think the technology is good for children when it comes to learning. It's basically up to the parents to filter how we're going to use that for their education and for their learning. I think, of course, it can hinder, especially teenagers. My nieces are that age at, 16, 17, 18, where they're on TikTok all the time, or they're on social media all the time. And it's a big influence on looking at these perfect bodies, perfect people on iPads. And then they look in the mirror and they say, well, I'm not perfect. And maybe to an adult, we're established, we have that confidence, but these kids don't.
Right.
And what the world and what society says and what's on your iPad really influences them.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a bad part of it. But it's really up to the parents to, at a young age, to say, hey, we're going to limit your usage. This is what you can and cannot watch.
Which is difficult to do, in full candidness. I remember a form of punishment would be to take away the technology, right? For a period of time when they were younger, I wouldn't let them do anything technological until noon, particularly on the weekends. They had to, I just had to let them say, you got to experience some of your dad's life, which was only kid, no technology. He was straight up bored, right?
Right.
You had to be creative with that thing.
Yep.
But to be honest, man, that's a 24/7, it's in your holster, right? You got access to that thing all the time.
Absolutely.
And maybe this is a failure of parenting, but at some point you just acquiesce to it. You just accept the fact that this thing is here. We can load up apps that may be able to censor or prohibit certain sites and those kind of things. But then I also have this nuance of I don't want to be so intrusive in their private life that there's a little bit of holding back and reservation. To what extent do I impose myself into their social media world? Right. I know you should, because of the dangers out there. I've always been of the mindset that if you try to caution them and raise them and talk about, some of the challenges and problems and risks and certain things, that you then kind of just let them move through it. Perhaps I'm wrong in that. What do you think?
Yeah, we dealt with that with Lauren. She's 18 now.
Okay.
And my ex and I had quite some conversations about when she could have an Instagram. She wanted an Instagram and a TikTok account. And fortunately, we were on the same page. And we said at 14,
okay,
no, no. And then 15, yeah, okay, you can have it. However, mom's going to be able to get in and out of your account. And when you show us that you can be responsible and have an account without any drama, then mom will drop it and you can have your own account.
Mm-hmm.
So she did that. She was responsible. Then about 16, something happened and some picture got on there,
Ah,
and we dropped it. We got rid of her account.
wow.
And at 16, and now everybody
Mhm.
had it at 16 years old, and she didn't.
Right. And that
Uh,
just caused havoc, right?
what's that?
Did that cause havoc in the house?
Yeah, and she learned her lesson in about a month, and we gave her it back, and there's never been a problem. Um, but it just needs to be monitored at a young age, and then
Right.
they can have the privilege of getting other accounts as they can show that they're responsible enough.
Yeah, I think that was a great way to do it. In my house, we kind of had an age of around 13.
Hmm.
Well, for the older boys, but they came into it differently, right? They were a little bit older, but I remember my one of my sons where we actually had he was actually younger than the technology advent. And so we went with 13 and just kind of let him do it. But he's proven responsible, but yeah, we were a little bit laxed in that regard there, Darrin.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
But
Rick says technology has hindered our kids in the sense of their relationship with others, right?
absolutely.
So in terms of they probably are exposed to the lives of more human beings. They probably have surface level conversations with more human beings. They probably have the adrenaline of like and surface comments more than any other generation. But genuine human relationships, right? Your ride or die best friend since the second grade. What any thoughts there on the consequences to genuine human proximate relationships?
Yeah, I think just meeting people in public,
Mm-hmm.
saying hello. You know, this younger generation is always on their phones. To strike up a conversation or say hello with a teenager nowadays is is very hard.
Right,
They're not paying attention to you. They're not paying attention to the surroundings. They're on the train or whatever at the bus stop, whatever. They're just in their own world.
right.
So there isn't much dialogue with these kids, um, so to speak, unless you bring it out in them. You know.
Right. All right. Let's shift here a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, what do you need the most as a father? And let me contextualize this.
Hmm.
I don't doubt you're confident in your fatherhood. I don't doubt that you and your wife have parent conversations.
Hmm.
Hopefully you and your parents do as well. But at the end of the day, what do you need as a father for your own sense of balance, a sense of self, sense of personal joy? What do you need as a father?
Um, I definitely need balance. I need my breaks. I think my profession gives me those breaks. Um, I feel that seeing my child um, experience things, go through hardships, and then come out of them on top or learn from them is rewarding. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't expect my children to make the best decisions or be the top of their class and everything, but as long as they learn something from their mistakes, learn something from their father and their parents, so that when they're older, they can say, yeah, I learned that from my dad. He really taught me in this area, or he was a big inspiration to me. Um, and then, I pray with my kids. I pray with my daughter every single night. So have some sort of sense of spirituality in them. They can make the choice on what way that wants to go, but I try to have that sense of spirituality in them to give them that confidence. You're on mute. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, D. Beautiful. As fathers who have many responsibilities, as all parents do, we need to ask ourselves frequently, what do we need, right? What do we need for our own civility and peace of mind? Because the answer to that question impacts how we are there and present for our children. Let me ask one question, and then I'm going to try an experiment, if that's all
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Do you have a tribe of men? A tribe of men that you go to, that care for you, that look out for you, that give you constructive feedback and critique when you need it in this space of male adulthood and fatherhood and husbandhood? Do you have a tribe?
Yeah, I have my tribe. I've got my longtime best friends, best buddies. I've got my fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
Yourself being one in that tribe.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, I've got Samuel Melvin who's on.
Big
I know I
Sam.
can go to him anytime I want. Um, and I've got I don't know if Mike Dinwiddie's on listening in on. He's one of the mentors or mentees. I was a mentor for him 20 years ago, and now
Okay.
he's a brand new father. So congratulations to him.
Right.
But
Congratulations.
yeah, congratulations on that. Um, but not only people that are older than me, but the younger generation. My son being one of them. Um, Giving me inspiration and feedback on what I've done and how I'm doing. Um, yeah, so I've got my tribe. Definitely have to have a tribe.
Yep, definitely. All right. Before we try my experiment, first time doing this, Darrin, you'll be the first guinea pig. I've put in the J4 Conversations, Two Fathers, Sons YouTube channel. We would definitely like you to kind of check that out, see some other shows, father to father interviews, two fathers and two sons chopping about life, and then also future father conversations, talking to young men about controlling their own reproduction. Really would love you to become a part of the community, subscribe, share outwardly, and offer some feedback. All right. So this is called father adjectives. All right.
Okay.
Hold on. Father adjectives. Sharing the screen. Chrome tab. Father adjectives. Do you see this? Let's see.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I'm trying to go from ethereal, philosophical, theoretical conversations about fatherhood, which are very important,
Hmm.
but also to adjectives that are associated with the act of fatherhood.
Okay.
Okay. So this is, I think, 13 or so adjectives for fathers. So I'd
Okay.
like you to pick two that you want to kind of elaborate on, and then maybe one that you still kind of would like to improve upon, right? And so just to give you an example, presence, right? When I
Hmm.
was a young person trying to figure out fatherhood, the first thing I said was, at least you got to be there, right?
Right. Right.
Even after I got separated from my first wife, I said, well, I need to at least go to the doctor visits. I need to go to all the games. Even in
Hmm.
my current situation, I defined fatherhood by physically, literally being present at everything they were doing, barring any major compromise. I would jokingly tell people, I don't care if President Obama was in town and asked to specifically meet with me. I am
Right.
not going to miss my son's game. You understand?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's an example of something to elaborate on, and then two to elaborate on, and one that you perhaps still need to maybe fine tune a little bit. It's your choice.
Okay. The first one is love. It sticks out the most. I think if you can give love to your children on a
Yes.
daily basis, verbally, physically, um, that's a lot of the battle right there. Love is going to uh, cover a couple of these things, which would be play, touch, um, listen, presence. I mean, it engulfs a lot of things, love.
Yes. Yes.
Um, the other one would be possibly touch, only
Okay.
because my dad never was affectionate to me. Um,
Mm,
so I think there's a big importance with that. Um, Being affectionate with your children, not just mom always being affectionate with the kid,
mm-hmm.
but fathers too.
Right.
That's really important. So touch them. Um, Something I probably could work on, or something that doesn't come easy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, as a young father, probably praise.
Ah.
Yeah, probably praise. I didn't praise them enough on their accomplishments. Maybe not as verbally or showed enough love of praise. I think I try to do it more now that I've learned that yeah, they need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think encouragement comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, praise.
Okay. All right. Do you think are there any adjectives that come to mind that are not here as I build this out?
Um,
And if you all in the chat boxes, I would if you have some adjectives that aren't here, and special shout out to Cricket Hochevar, I believe. Sorry for destroying your name.
Cricket
Hochevar, I'm
Hochevar.
sorry.
She's
That's some
one
of
of
your
my good
people,
friends.
D? Is that some of your people?
Yes, that's my people. That's
There
my
it is.
people.
This is a wonderful conversation. Well,
And
thank you
she
so
went to
much.
Arizona State too.
And if you have a
She's a
question
Sun
for
Devil.
Darrin, definitely put it in the box or in the chats. You guys tell us what two adjectives stand out for you. All right. So D, I'm sorry I cut you off, brother.
Yeah, shout out to Cricket out there. She's a Sun Devil.
Okay.
Supporting Sun Devils here.
Yes, indeed.
I think one of the things is understanding. Having understanding. I think over the years you gain understanding. And once you have more understanding of your child, if you have more than one child, you'll know that not one child's the same. So you have to deal with them differently in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have understanding, it allows you to be more patient, I think.
Yeah. 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 In the spirit of reciprocity, one thing that I regretted is I didn't play enough with my kids. In part, I had a lot of kids that were 2 years apart. They were kind of step ladder kids.
Right.
And they became a little pack unto themselves and they played among each other. But I wish, part I was hustling, man. I was working the full time. I had hustle, speaking gigs, but I should have been much more intentional for ground play. Take off the shoes, take off the tie, just start to, a little safe rough housing with the kids. There's an element of touch there, but I should have been more intentional. I always kind of stood back as an observer, just almost obsessively mindful of the parent responsibility. And when I should have been less rigid and just kind of played a little bit more, because in play is affection. Not only do they sort of understand the banter, especially among boys, sort of roughhousing and the nuance of that, which is important. But I wish I would have played a little bit more. So that's kind of a regret. So I look forward to the grandbabies. I'm a body slam them.
You get all that play out.
There it is. Yep. Slick Rick, my brother, says compassion and patience. Oh shoot, those aren't even on there.
Compassion, that's a good one. That's a very good one.
Compassion and patience. Okay, so y'all have given me 3 more. All right, we're gonna. So tell me what you think about this little exercise. Is it a keeper or?
Definitely a keeper. I like that.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. So now I want to really turn the corner. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I'd really like to see if the chat box has any questions for Darrin or for myself. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Check out that J4 Conversations. Share that outward if you think other fathers can benefit from that. Or if you think fathers would like to be a part of the show, future fathers as well as current fathers, I'd love to just chop it up with them. This is a passion hobby of mine. And D is quickly becoming an empty nest project of mine. My 17-year-old is going to go to college in about 6 months, and I don't know what the old man's going to do.
Peace and quiet.
All right. Cricket says intentional. Okay.
Intentional. I like that.
Tell me what you mean more about that, Cricket in the box. Intentional, right? Being deliberate, having a plan, rolling it out. What are your thoughts there? All right. D, do you have any questions of me before we kind of close out? Any questions of me in this space?
Yeah, kind of the same question I had, or you had for me about the distance between your children's age. Mm-hmm. What were some of the categories, or what are some of the things that you have learned between your oldest and your youngest, and how did that affect you raising your youngest child?
That's a great point. There's also a nuance of, and don't beat me up if this gets read down the road. There's a nuance, at least in my worldview, and I know identity dynamics are different these days, but I had a greater confidence in raising boys than I had in raising daughters. Mm-hmm. My first wife and I divorced early, and so for the most part, my daughter was raised in a single parent situation.
Okay.
And so I wasn't there for the day-to-day learning of parenthood. And then I had the 4 boys, and there was a certain comfort level there and a kind of ownership of that, certainly with my wife. But then when baby girl came along 17 years ago, there was also this dynamic of, well, I'm going to let the feminine female rearing primarily fall to my wife, and I was going to play more of a backup complementary role in terms of rearing her, and one that was more by design praising, right? How you doing, baby? How you doing, beautiful? Praising, praising intelligence, praising beauty, praising confidence, those kind of things. To where with my boys, it was more directive and corrective, right? And so there's a gender nuance that plays itself out there. There's also difference being a 28-year-old when I had my second child with my first wife. There's a difference in terms of maturity. There's a difference in terms of toolkit, your toolbox, what resources you have, than my 17-year-old that was born when I was, 37, right?
Right.
So I was much calmer. There's a lot of hustling and financial stress, in the earlier years. So the difference between the two, I would think, is in part maturity, also gender dynamics. That's certainly worthy of critique.
Okay.
But then also lessons learned. For example, my oldest boy, my first child with my second wife, we went to the emergency hospital. Hell, we went to the urgent care almost once a month. What's that? That's a bump. He's coughing too much. What is it? He got a little rash. It was frantic, right?
Yeah.
And by the time the third one came around, I remember sitting in there. I think it was, I can't remember what the concern was, but we check this out. Let me tell you about poor parenting, right? Poor parenting. We were there, but it was like, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes. And then me and my wife had to come to the conclusion. That baby all right.
He's fine.
That baby's all right. Let's go. Right. And then after that point, I mean, you just see things, and children have sort of similar developmental behavior patterns at given ages where you just saw things, right? So the sense of franticness, urgency, all that just calm with experience. And so I raised my current daughter from a much more space that leans love rather than correction, much more praise rather than critique. And my earlier kids suffered the wrath of my wanting to live vicariously through them, right? Exposing them to things that I thought I missed out on, right?
Okay.
But with baby girl right now, I'm like, baby, whatever it is you want to do, Dad got your back. I support you. I love you. Just don't break my bank account. So it's a calmness, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that does. That's good insight. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep. All right, D, I'm going to give you the last word, but let's check the Facebook. Daughters need the masculine positivity with intelligence. Okay. Cricket's getting in me. She said, boy, you better raise them daughters with some balance.
That's
they understand men enjoy and respect more than their femininity. Talk to me, Cricket. Cricket's bringing up a great point, right? How do we raise them in loving ways, but also give them some insight into a masculine presence, right? But also, and I don't, Cricket maybe have been saying this, but we got to hip them to what are quality men in their own future selection in terms of mate selection, assuming that is heterosexual or homosexual, whatever the case may be. No, great challenge, Cricket. Great challenge.
Very good. That's very good.
Yeah, easier said than done, I would say. Put some tussin on it. That's my brother. put some tussin on it. All right. Without seeing any questions, Don Clytus is in the house. Don is also in the house. Good to see you, Don. Sun Devil 2022. Don, if not already, going over to J4 Conversation, give me a subscribe, talk to me. D, as we are on the top of the hour, this has been a joyful, beautiful conversation. Again, thank you for all your support. Day one from J4 Conversations. The last word is yours, man. Talk to the beautiful people, the folks listening in, or anything that's on your spirit.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining in on J4 Conversations. Thank you to our host, AJ. What a great show he's got here. Keep supporting it on Facebook, YouTube. Really enjoyed your questions. Thank you, Cricket, for chiming in and being a part of this. Sam, everyone that's been joining us, thanks so much. And thanks for having me again, AJ.
My pleasure, D. We got to go off set right quick. Jarrell, are you the beautiful young man that recently had a child that was on the last show? He asks a question. I think it's a response to my wanting to live vicariously. What's wrong with exposing your kids to things you never experienced? All right, let's just take that as written. D, what is your thoughts there?
Exposing yourself to, say the question one more time.
What's wrong with exposing your kids to things you've never experienced?
Absolutely nothing. I think that's great. My parents definitely did it for me. They never flew. I played hockey because, no black kids played hockey back then.
Right.
But I wanted to play hockey. So my parents said, okay, you can play hockey. So I don't think there's anything. I think that's great. A great thing to do is introduce your kids to things that you may not be interested in or even dreamed of doing. Really good.
Right. No, great response, Darrell. I would just say take the sort of the inverse is a lot of times. Let me just be candid and transparent. I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. I didn't have the skill set nor the height, but I did put my kids in basketball. And there was one son in particular that just was a natural talented athlete. And so I kept putting him in that. He ended up excelling in football, wanted to play soccer, did track, did track at a Division I level there for a short period of time. But I probably kept him in basketball a little bit more intentionally than I should have. I should have at some point stepped back. He was really leaning towards football and excelled in that more. And had talked to me about wanting to stop playing basketball. And then I used my words and position of authority to kind of really challenge him on that. But that was probably subconsciously or outright me wanting to live vicariously through him, finding great joy in his basketball achievements. I think that's where it becomes a problem, right? That's where it becomes a problem. So yes, a part of parenting is exposure. But we got to be careful not to expose them in things with some kind of, unlife lived agenda, if that makes any sense. Right. Great question, Jarrell. Jarrell, if you are that new father, please hit me up in LinkedIn. I want to interview you as a new father. Makes sense, focusing on an agenda that you wanted instead of an agenda that they wanted. Yes, that can be a parenting flaw, is where we have an obsession. We think we're going to get some kind of accolade or public pride from it. So we push our babies in that way. We got to expose, and then we got to get the heck out of the way.
That's right.
All right, D, thank you so much, brother.
Righty.
Continued strength and joy and love and raising your beautiful seeds. Joy, wishing you joy and continued growth with your beautiful wife. But more importantly, as my friend and frat brother, thank you so much for the human being you are and for supporting me in this venture.
Likewise, and thank you for having me, AJ.
Yep. On behalf of J4 Conversations, please go over to the website, check us out, subscribe, but more importantly, share. Share this with beautiful young people, young men who might benefit from the conversation. Hit us up in the contact information if there's a subject that you'd like us to explore. D, stay on the line with me. On behalf of J4 Conversations, love. Y'all take care of yourself.